Live from the City Building in Athens, Ohio, your local source for live city meetings, TGC 15 presents Athens City Council.
Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, July 14th, 2008. This evening, City Council is going to be meeting in a series of probably just about every committee that we have formed here. So expect a long evening. I would like to make an initial announcement. We have scheduled a lunch with President McDavis of Ohio University for City Council on Thursday the 24th at noon. That, of course, is open to the public or any member of the press that would like to come. We are not exactly sure of exactly where it's going to be. We'll know for sure next Monday. We thought we did, but it sounds like they can't handle us, so we'll let you know where it's going to be next Monday. And of course, the clerk of council will send that out. First committee on the agenda is the Transportation Committee. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight we have with us Street Director Andy Stone, who will be able to help us with some additional information about the improvements plan for the Richland 682 process of improvements that we'll be embarking on in the next few years. And I know citizens have asked me different questions, and I've gone back to Andy. I've realized he has a wealth of information on the background about this then he can answer a lot of our questions and just help educate us about this. So, Andy.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll attempt to be brief this evening. The purpose of my visit here is to clarify the alternative selection process that we went through to arrive at the roundabout, the modern roundabout, as the alternative for the Richland Avenue project. I got a couple of multimedia things that we'll go through here. One thing that I'm going to have running in the background the entire time is the VISIM vehicle simulation software simulation of the proposed intersection design. And it's going to show a constant loop of the AM peak hour traffic and the PM peak hour traffic at the 2030 design year volumes. So that's going to be running it the whole time because one of the concerns has been the capacity of the intersection, specifically at AM and PM peak hours. So I'll just let that run the whole time. Our concept, the way that we selected which concepts we would evaluate, we looked at several different options for the intersection that were just ideas that were thrown out. The steering committee, myself, Ray Hazlett at the time, representatives from ODOT District 10, Pam Callahan from OU, and Steve Teakin from Burgess and Nipel were the steering committee. And all of the concepts that we evaluated needed to meet a demonstrated definite need. We really had 4 selection criteria. These are the things that we threw out, concepts that didn't meet these selection criteria. They had to improve the safety of the intersection. We got the safety grant specifically because of the high crash rate. They had to improve vehicular capacity in the intersection, which went hand in hand due to a lot of the accidents occurring due to congestion. Had to repair the distress to the bridge, and it had to be economically feasible. Recent concerns have asked about, why didn't we consider an interchange or an overpass of 682 over Richland 680 or over Richland Avenue? The $15 million to $20 million price tag was the reason that one was thrown out. It just was not economically feasible. Do nothing is always an option. However, that doesn't address the top 3 of those selection criteria. So we came up with 2 alternatives. You've seen these before. This was alternative 1. This is the traditional intersection with the widened approaches on 3 directions, the south, east, and north approach to the intersection. This does require a widening to the bridge if we went with option 1 of alternative 1. One sub-option was to include sidewalks on the bridge. The sub-option to this was to put the pedestrian bridge separate and then not have to widen the bridge to attain the 6 lanes that you needed to be able to work with the traditional signal. And that's what's shown there in the lower right-hand corner. Alternative 2 was the modern roundabout design. One of the benefits of this this particular alternative was that you didn't have to widen the bridge and you could continue to keep pedestrians and bikes on it. All right, so then after coming up with these two basic alternatives, we had to come up with an evaluation process. Again, set by the steering committee, the criteria that we use to evaluate. We had originally 18 needs, goals, and objectives. That's what we went to the public with at the first and second public meetings. Once we really sat down to evaluate it, we called about 6 of those, and we came up with 12 evaluation criteria. These evaluation criteria were based on both our needs, as we determined as a steering committee, as well as stakeholder interviews, which specific was public safety forces, Chamber of Commerce, various boards and commissions, various neighborhood organizations, student senate, and other concerned groups. And then also the input that we got from the public meetings. That's how we came up with our 12 evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria were a relative values type evaluation, that is to say which of the alternatives was better under those 12 criteria. We knew that each alternative would meet these criteria because we put forth those in the selection process, but how well each one would do is what we evaluated. They had to improve safety at the intersection, number 1. Number 2, had to provide acceptable operations for the Dairy Lane intersection. We had to repair the bridge. We had to safely convey pedestrians and bikes through the intersection and connect with existing facilities, most namely the Hockhocking-Adena Bikeway. We had to include excellent urban design aesthetics. We had to limit costs to the valuable ODOT grants, as well as the city's match and any OU funds that we could get out of them. We had to avoid negative environmental impacts. We had to see how well the alternative would reduce vehicle speeds on Richland Avenue. We'd have to see how well the alternative would accommodate and enhance our public transit, how well it supported special event traffic, how well it maintained Richland Avenue as a critical fire and police corridor, and then how well it maintained the existing service roads to our pump station and to the OU golf course that's on the northeast corner of the intersection right now. As we went through our evaluation, we determined that as we compared the various alternatives, in most cases, the two alternatives were equal. However, in condition 1, the safety of the intersection, alternative 2 was superior. In condition 4, which was our evaluation criteria 4, to safely convey pedestrians and bikes through the intersection, we determined that option 2 of alternative 1 and alternative 2 were superior to alternative 1. We determined that alternative 2 was superior in urban aesthetics. We determined it was superior with the project costs. We determined it was superior in avoiding the environmental impacts. We determined it was superior in reducing vehicle speeds on Richland and 682. In all the other examples, the two alternatives were comparable in the evaluation criteria. I want to talk specifically about a local example now of why a roundabout intersection or an example of where a roundabout intersection has improved safety. Some of you are familiar with this location. This is Muirfield Drive and Brand Road intersection in Dublin, Ohio. This was the original layout of that intersection before the roundabout was installed. It was a 4-way stop with bypass lanes on the 4 corners. It was somewhat confusing to drivers, didn't meet drivers' expectations, and if you're familiar with this area, they do receive once a year a large number of out-of-town visitors. That's what went in after the fact. This is the existing roundabout in Dublin. And it has comparable traffic volumes, if not higher, than our particular location. Some quick data, and I can provide this to you in more detail on the Dublin intersection. This is for similar time periods, I believe about a 2-year period before and a 2-year period after the intersection was changed. Note that there's a 78% reduction in severity of accidents. That is to say, the vast majority of accidents were property damage only. They only had one accident that was an injury accident after the intersection was changed. And then overall, a 62% reduction in accidents. You can see in the rate, that is to say 2.7 vehicles per million vehicles entering the intersection were involved in accidents, whereas afterwards only 1 per million vehicles entering the intersection. And again, we've talked about the high damage, high injury, high fatality potential type crash, and those are those angle type crashes, and they had 70% less crashes of that type of accident. Something else I also want to touch on here that's been expressed recently with both some public comments by various citizens and concerns that people have addressed to me. And then specifically modern roundabouts versus your traditional traffic circles. Most specifically, you see these in the U.S. Northeast. This slide, probably better than anything else that I can show you, describes the difference between a modern roundabout and one of the traffic circles that we see in New Jersey, New York, some of the older Massachusetts, some of the older type circular intersections that people a lot of times when they think about roundabouts, especially if they're from the Northeast, what they think about. You can see here, this is a traditional traffic circle with a 660-foot inscribed diameter with circulating traffic, characterized by very high speeds, usually 45, 50 miles an hour of circulating traffic. Your lots of merging and weaving happening inside the circle itself, as opposed to just yielding for entry. And what you see here is the construction of the replacement, which is a 220-foot diameter modern roundabout, which is a completely different intersection other than it's the same shape. But as far as performance goes, completely different. This is the Google Earth capture of the existing same location there in Kingston, New York, where this switch happened. You can see currently the new modern roundabout, and you can see the footprint of the old traffic circle, traditional traffic circle. Here's another example, Johnson City, same thing. You can see the modern roundabout being constructed in the center to replace a traditional traffic circle of a much larger diameter. Recently, there was some public commentary about 2 locations in particular, one in Syracuse, New York. Here's a aerial snapshot of that location in Syracuse, New York. Shows the traditional traffic circle that's at that location. Very different than our situation in that there's 5 approaches in this location. And if you note, there's a 650-foot inscribed diameter in the inside. Very high speed, rotating traffic, lots of merging and weaving actions happening in this area. Very different than an urban modern roundabout. Here's the other location that was recently alluded to as far as a problematic location. This is one at the southern part of Boston on the freeway where it changes off of Route 3 to go out to Cape Cod. Lots of out-of-town guests in this area too. They had a capacity problem here. Again, you can see 5 approaches, and you can see also a very large inscribed diameter, 300 feet. What we're looking at is a little bit closer to 180 feet in the design for ours. So completely different motion happening inside in the traditional traffic circle versus a modern roundabout. Some other recently expressed concerns that I just want to put to rest because there's some inaccuracies out there. Stoplight camera system has a better solution for accidents in the Richland Avenue intersection. One of the things that we found when we did the accident analysis of our particular intersection is most of the accidents that occur are congestion-type rear-ending accidents that happen due to the signal, people trying to beat the signal as they go across the bridge. And the other one is alignment accidents happening as people try to make that left-hand turn off of Richland South onto the ramp. They can't quite line up. And then you also have that same exact problem with people trying to meet that slight bend skew as you come through on 682. Not a problem that people running red lights. Running red lights really isn't a problem at this intersection. However, as noted in our recent fatality, a side impact crash was the result of someone running a red light, and whether or not there's a camera there or not is not going to stop that one random tragic event. Another recently expressed concern was the bridge over Richland as being a better solution. I think I talked about that in the beginning, saying that the price tag just made that completely infeasible for moving 4 lanes of 682 over top of Richland Avenue. We talked about move-in and home game intersection capacity. Something we did very recently at the request of the mayor was sit down with the same vehicle simulation software and count out every single traffic parking space, rather, in the vicinity of the stadium and the basketball arena at OU to determine what we thought would be the approximate number of vehicles coming into the area for a game. And then we crammed them all through this intersection in a 1-hour window of people approaching the game and a 45-minute window of people leaving. Yes, there was some congestion during people approaching, but it's no different than the signal that we have now. We also were able to put in some aspects of the simulation to allow for what would happen if an officer were to stop one of the legs to allow one of the other legs to clear out, and it worked fine. So it's not something that can't be dealt with any differently than our current situation with a signalized intersection has. And again, you don't design for your single one large, huge event that you have per year, or else you'd be spending millions of dollars doing 6 and 7 and 8 lane wide roads to deal with that one large event. Unnecessary expense for peds and bikes due to low usage. Some of the comments out there were that there were very low pedestrian and bike usage in this intersection, and we found that not to be the case. In the AM, noon, and PM peak hour counts that we did during the analysis of the intersection, we found that there were over 20, and in some cases over 30 pedestrian and cyclists traveling through the intersection during those peak hour times that we're designing for. Environmental issues regarding widening. One of the things that we noted in our alternative selection was that the widening of the 3 approaches that was required with the traditional intersection will get into a significant portion of the Southside Park. Also, some of the area that has some cattails, some wet area there in the southeast corner. We're trying to avoid as much impact as possible. Doesn't matter what that wet area is. If it harbors species that under NEPA are a concern, then you have to deal with it as such that it's a wetland. It doesn't matter whether it's a poorly maintained drainage ditch or not. That's something we got to deal with. So our goal is to rather than flout the law, our goal is to try to find the project that will impact it the least. And then lastly, perhaps this money would be better used on the US 33, 50, and Ohio 32 bypass and the ramp for repairs. Just a side note, ODOT does plan a major bypass repair project on the same scope of what they did at the Columbus Road and US 33 interchange last year to a lot of those locations for summer of 2009. So that's already on the agenda. That's all I have. Hopefully I addressed some of the concerns that are out there. If you have any questions, I can answer them now.
Can you just point out where the tunnel would be for pedestrians and cyclists? I think I understand, and there will only be pedestrians on one side of Richland Bridge then, is that correct?
Correct, and I apologize for the way the simulation shows right here. If we go back to that particular slide, we took out those other two crosswalks that are currently shown right here and right here because we determined that there wasn't a need for those, and the vast majority of pedestrians will move on this side. Here's the at-grade crossing right here, and then here's where the tunnel would be right here. This kind of weird skew that goes way out here is in order to make the grade requirement for an ADA a flat enough grade for an ADA ramp. One of our considerations as we go into design is to put a couple of paths. The straight line path for most of the people that are going to walk, and then also maintain the path that would allow for ADA access. You
do not feel that we need a pedestrian crosswalk there?
I do not. Because in my opinion, if we do it correctly, we will convey pedestrians to the the western side of the road, south by Dairy Lane and north across on the north end of the bridge. So at that point, really the only place that you're going to be walking is north-south on this side. One of the things we did note that there is occasionally, in addition to parking, sometimes on sporting events, but more often for some archery classes that OU holds in this field down here. Wait till the other one comes back up. We talked about putting in a gravel path that would go underneath the bridge the same way that the bike path does on the other side to convey pedestrians and completely grade separate them from traffic. So for users of this area, they can access it from this side. That's something that we're considering doing in the design.
Okay.
Jim?
You just mentioned conveying pedestrians and bicyclists outside of that picture. In the one to the south would be at Dairy Lane.
Correct.
Are you envisioning a stoplight there then?
The design will be such that a signal could be installed after the fact if it's determined that we're still having a problem with queuing on Dairy Lane after the roundabout's installed. And I don't believe that well, perhaps the example does. I'll back up to it for you. What you'll note here on the Dairy Lane approach is that it's split into a right turn and a left turn lanes. One of the big problems that we have now with the queuing that happens on Dairy Lane is the one vehicle that travels and is the one vehicle that has to turn left and is having problems getting out and into the road, and there's a bunch of people that want to turn right. We think that this treatment with the two lanes on southbound Dairy Lane will solve that. However, the intersection will be set up so that should that still be a problem, we still have a queuing problem where people can't get out, can't find enough gaps in that southbound traffic to get out and make it northbound, that we could put a signal there at some future time. And that wouldn't impact this intersection. You can set the timing as such that it would not.
Is there in the works a intersection at the Summit and Courtyard intersection? Does that interfere? I mean, we have entrances on both sides there for both apartment complexes.
A signal?
Yeah.
As it stands now, I mean, that's beyond the scope of this project, sir. When we modeled this traffic for this, we used projected traffic for that new entryway, and we based it on the existing traffic that occurs at the University Courtyard entrance driveway there. We basically took a factor of 1.5 because there's about 150% of the capacity of University Courtyard is what's going to be at Summit. We use that same number for the number of vehicles that would make that left-hand turn, and use it for the volume of traffic. But as far as need for a signal, no warrant study has been conducted that I know of. I know that prior traffic studies, I think when it was Campus Edge was the machination of that particular development, I think they did a traffic study that showed that there would not be a signal warranted. However, we've not looked at it with this project.
I just have more of a comment, I guess. When this was first being publicly discussed, I was pretty hesitant about the roundabout, and I had reservations. But over the past year, I've been really strongly convinced that it's the best option for this intersection, and just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
Thank you.
One last
Yes, sir.
question. In earlier discussions, I recall that you said this is the city's first choice, but now it's gone to ODOT and they review it and can make other choices? Is that
ODOT can't tell us to do it another way. They can non-concur with our decision, in which case they could just hold the funding and say, okay, we don't want you to do this, and so therefore, but they can't instead force us to do it differently.
do you have some feeling of how this is going to work out?
I believe that ODOT District 10 is very strongly in favor of this particular alternative.
And given that, we would look at construction starting in 2010.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
No miscellaneous?
No miscellaneous items.
Community issues, Jim or Nancy?
Mr. President, couple issues with community issues. I think people will have noticed that our Clean Committee is not present tonight. There have been some further developments in their plans for uptown recycling, and they would prefer to have those worked out before they come to see us. So the committee will not be presenting tonight. Therefore, I would like to take these few minutes to insert a quick Finance Committee meeting. About 4 o'clock.
Can I make a real quick
Yes.
comment on that Clean Committee
Yes.
before we move off the agenda? And Paul, maybe this is something I just need to discuss with you. I was copied, or I saw your response to an email on which I was not initially copied, but it seemed to imply that there were some things that I was needing to add to this process, and we're not at that point yet as far as I know.
No, I was just informing them that we will be meeting with these property owners to talk about the use of the property.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear. This isn't anything that's come to my office and we're sitting on anything, right? We still haven't gotten the information we need on that, so, thanks.
Okay. Finance. The auditor, I passed this around to council members. The auditor has a couple suggestions for us to consider at Monday's meeting. We have several CDBG grants in process in the city, and some of those need some additional appropriations. The funds have been received or will be received. I'm not sure, the auditor's not here, but we need to increase appropriations in 2 of those CDBG grant projects. The first one is our CHIP project, which involves upgrading houses in parts of the city, and we have appropriated $87,000. The total funds are $136,000, so we need to appropriate $48,600 additionally to make that grant fully funded. Very similar activity with regards to CDBG grant that's funding several projects in the city. We need to appropriate an additional $24,200 to cover 3 projects that are in process or maybe are even finished. The Arts West project for the handicap ramp, I believe, is done. Granville Mary Street rebuild is yet to start, but will be done this summer. And the steps going up the hill from Fort Street up to Fairview are actually in the process of being worked on now. So those 3 projects will be covered by this additional appropriation from funds that are coming to us or already received for CDBG grant projects. Any questions about that? We'll be bringing that up on Monday. Mayor, do you have something to say?
No, I don't.
Okay. And there's another note from her regarding the community corrections grant that we talked about last week, but I'm going to wait till the auditor's here, maybe on Monday, to get the details on that. So that's really it. I do have a comment. Nancy Bain and I are on the Finance Committee, and we met with the auditor and the mayor last week, and the service safety director and the assistant auditor were involved to talk about one of the responsibilities of the city council is to effect a budget planning process and to vote to put into effect a budget at the end of the year. This is only July, but city council normally takes the month of August off, which I think we're planning to do, which means we're going to come back in September. All of a sudden, the end of the year is up on us. So we have asked the mayor and the service safety director to help us with some planning processes that we're going to ask directors of the various departments to help us with. First of all, we're going to ask the department heads to look at their plans for the rest of the year. Any large expenses, any projects that are planned to occur but haven't been funded yet, so that City Council will be aware of that when we're making plans. And secondly, for 2009, we're asking the department heads during the month of August and early September to begin planning for 2009. And we have asked them to look at the possibility for some small decreases in their budget, their department budgets. We threw out the numbers of 7%, 5%, or 3%. I think we're probably going to revise those down, maybe to 5, 3, and 2. It seems to be more comfortable level. We're not suggesting that this will happen, but we do know that cities and municipalities, even states around us, are beginning to be troubled by budget problems, and we would like to be prepared. We're asking each of these department heads to look at their budget and say, maybe we could delay this project until 2010. Just looking for small savings in the budget. Our auditor tells us that the income tax, which funds most of our activities, is rising at 1% to 2%. But we know personnel costs are rising. We know energy costs are rising, and so we're just asking for a little help from department heads in planning for the 2009 budget. This is still planning process. In this process, of course, I need to back up. In this process of looking at what small reductions could be made, we're asking just to remove any reduction of personnel from that process. City Council's hope and desire is to protect the jobs of all our employees at not all costs, but that's our main goal. If small cuts have to be made, we do want to protect our personnel. Jim. Two things. Ms. Main first.
Ms. Main. Okay. Let me reiterate what we said. I'm more the gloom and doom person, so I will say that I believe that there's a huge difference between 1.8% and 3% or 4%. And so with those increases in electricity and gas, I feel very, very much concerned. And I hope this proactive approach puts us in a position, which we've been on since the beginning of this year, to meet the needs of keeping all of our people. And some of the things that we might see is reduction in some temporary positions, reduction perhaps if they can find a way. I know at least one area where job owning by the previous mayor resulted in very much more appropriate use of overtime after a flagrant use set of uses, and some training perhaps, or, let's see, what are you doing that you could do more efficiently? It's sort of like at home. If you have a little bit of a budget crisis, what do you do to save money? And that's what we're asking them to do, to apply some of those principles to this. When we're talking about substantial changes, I think we're going to see bus increases, demands, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, and other things. That's a lot of money we start looking at because of things that have happened. So I do think that we do want to keep everyone who's our regular employees on the job. We want to continue and flourish and keep a healthy, safe city. But it's going to be tough. Gasoline, natural gas is now, I guess, if I read and I do for my job, going to be double what it is this year. And some of our facilities use natural gas. And so we've got to be ready. Electricity is guaranteed to go up, even if we employ that new system that was touted last week. So, maybe we can use less electricity. But so I'm the gloom and doom person. We'll go with that.
Mayor Weil.
I did bring this up to the staff meeting last Wednesday so they can start looking at it. I probably should have emphasized more the fact that you're looking at not the transaction class 100, which is basically their earnings and the positions. But I did state that, but probably not as emphatically as probably someone would like to hear. They will look at it. Hopefully, they'll get back to us by September with some recommendations. I know that you're planning, finance and personnel, technically you're like coordinators, and anybody who's interacting with the various departments, whether fire, police, or recreation, get involved in the budget as city council members. And I say that because being the new mayor, the dynamic has changed. I'm learning aspects of it, and you should be learning too, because eventually you'll have to vote on it.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And I'll point out that I did talk to another mayor who's concerned about his budget, and he's talking about 2% raises in his workforce. And he's worried about where his budget crunch is at this point. So we're a whole notch percentage higher, or 2, depending on which part of the workforce we're talking about. And that's what you have to consider. And we're about 80% of our budget is personnel. If you look at last year's 150, Ordinance 15007.
Any questions or concerns from the council members? We had suggested that we'd like to have these responses back probably by September 15th. Not the day we come back, but in September. Again, we will cooperate with all of the departments in further planning. Thank them for their cooperation. Okay, now we're going to go back to community issues. The one issue that's on our agenda is President of Council, parentheses, term of office. I think maybe Councilmember Bain knows more about that than I do.
Yes. The proposal here is one that has been, I think, discussed with some members of council. I don't know how far. I've been working on some other things, plumbing in the house next door mainly, but that's another matter. We have a president of council who's next in line for the mayoral position, and I think over time it's come to our attention that it would be better probably for continuity's sake to have a 4-year term alternating years in order to assure that we have coverage and that there is that administrator that works with us, the 7 of us, is serving on a staggered term with the mayor, and that's basically the proposal. In order to do this, and I believe Patrick has already looked into it, we have to have a resolution on the agenda next week to have this happen. I don't think we're going to be changing the salary. All we're going to do is send it to the voters. If the voters agree that it's a good idea, that we would have this continuity-based approach to things, then we will have at the next election a 4-year rather than a 2-year term for it.
And I would point out that there's a specific actual section of the revised code which deals with the term length of presidents of councils, and specifically provides that council can pass a resolution asking that the Board of Elections place the issue on the ballot for consideration by the voters in the city 75 days prior to the next election. So in this case, I believe that would be August 21st. Now I'm still looking into the question of whether we could do a 1 reading as opposed to a 3 reading resolution. I tend to think we probably can, because we're not spending money, we're not really taking any kind of a formal action. Other than we're not even really taking a position as to what is the appropriate term for president of council. Rather, we're just asking the Board of Elections to place that question before the voters. And so
The
I will.
ultimate electors.
And so I will. You know, a lawyer never gives a straight yes or no answer to anything. I think probably we will be able to. Probably we'll be able to do a 1 reading resolution on this. But if that turns out not to be the case, I'll certainly make sure that Debbie has that information before we assemble the agenda for the next meeting.
May I speak?
Oh, yes, you may.
Okay. The way this came about, when a new term of council was taking place, I usually get out the Ohio Revised Code and I review that part where it says what the duties of president of council are, and it, of course, is to appoint committees. But basically, the term of council or president of council is a member of the administration, not really a member of council, which is kind of odd the way that it functions. And in a statutory city, as we said under 73309, I stumbled into a city legislative authority may by majority vote adopt a resolution calling the Board of Elections to submit to the city electors the questions of whether the term of president of the legislative authority should be changed from 2 to 4 years. And when I discussed it with several members of council, and we started going over some of the changes that we've had recently. And by that, in the last year, we've had a new mayor, a new law director, a new deputy auditor, 2 new service safety directors, 4 new members of council. The turnover has been more than a little bit substantial. I think it could have really been very problematic if the members of council that had turned over had been our senior members of Bain and Sands and those that have really gotten to know the budgetary process and how to get things through and what happens along the way. A number of terms ago, I understand that this was something that was able to be done with the auditor and the treasurer. They now have staggered terms so that the city auditor never turns over in the same year that the city treasurer. Now, I think my good friend, Member Bain, made a mistake when she said the president is in line to be the next president or next mayor. That
The president of the U.S. is okay.
okay. That's certainly not the case that I know anything about. But
No, you serve in the okay.
and that's exactly true.
I misspoke.
Anytime Mayor Weil is out of town and Mayor Abel, I do serve as acting mayor. That is set up again by the Ohio Revised Code. I think for the person that assumes this chair in the next term, it would be good government if the mayor and the president of council changed positions at a different time. The citizens of Athens, through the Ohio Revised Code and the way that statutory cities are governed, can change every member on this council at once. And maybe there ought to be a time that happens, I don't know. But I think if that did happen, that it would be good if whoever is in this chair is not going to change at the same time that the mayor does, at the same time that all of the council members do, at the same time that other elected officials can. I think it would provide for some continuity. And everyone that I took this to and mentioned it to seems to think it's a good idea. This does not mean that we're going to do anything more than say we're giving the citizens a chance to vote on it. And that's all it is. If you think it's worthy that the citizens of Athens should look at this issue and see, is this how they want their city to operate, then vote in favor of it. But it will be the citizens next time that vote on it. For this to happen, and again, it's a shame that this is coming up with not a lot of extra notice by the time it has to be there. But if it's going to work out that it changes at different times than when the mayor does, if it's on an alternate 2 years than when the mayor is elected, it needs to be on this November's election. So that's why it's before you now. Questions or comments?
I think that would be great. That was as a new council member, that was one of my concerns. What if we were all new? Where's the continuity? So I think
And the mayor knew too.
Right, and the mayor knew too.
Yeah.
So I'm for it.
Okay. Thank you.
It'll be up for reading. Miscellaneous, I have one.
Miscellaneous?
Miscellaneous, I don't know who's in charge of liquor licenses, but we have the Last Hurrah on 895 East State Street, a restaurant, which is a B license new, and it would only go to another restaurant. But I would like to know what happened to Damon's license. Did it just die, or is it somewhere else waiting to come back?
I think the type of if I understand this correctly, and I quite likely do not, when you have a restaurant of a certain square footage,
Right.
then if somebody opens another one in that location, they can get it. Is that correct?
But this isn't a transfer, so I just want Debbie to check if she would.
This is new. I think that's what it amounts to, that literally, if it's a restaurant over a certain square footage that gets a certain percentage of its income from food only, they can get this type of a license.
So Renee, I just wanted to make, so we have information, we probably, I don't know if we want to send Patrick up there to argue about it or not. He doesn't even know he'd have to do it.
Or are we mad at him this week?
Keep him off the street.
Nancy, that's
Keep him
a
out
D
of
license?
B.
B.
It's a D51.
It's a D51. Okay.
Or
just one.
I, I'm not sure which it is.
Transaction B new? Let's see, it's up here. B. B new.
Okay, and
So
where is
she's
it?
going to check into it for us.
Where's the location?
Damon's. Michelle. D5I.
Okay.
Well, if they made it, I don't know what that is. It says down here. Be new. First, we can ask them to clarify their form. And then after,
They'll get right on that.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they care what little people in Athens think. Okay,
We will follow up on
we
that.
will follow up on that. If there's any need to ask for a hearing, we'll do it next week.
Right, I was going to say the follow-up needs to occur by next week.
And we'll,
Any other miscellaneous for community issues? Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Indeed.
So next we have Planning and Development Committee. The main thing on our agenda, Jennifer Simon is here. When she came and reported to us on the progress of the chamber, we had some initial discussion about the changes around economic development that are being discussed. And at that time, council asked to have more of a work session to talk that through. Because there's a lot on the agenda tonight, what Jennifer and I talked about is that she would take about 5 minutes to go over the proposed structure, and then I'm going to hand out the existing scope of services that's attached to the chamber contract, so you can see what we're currently paying for in terms of economic development. And we'll take about 5 minutes to go over that, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for question and answer. So, thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you. The document that you have before you is the business plan that we put together that is definitely still a work in progress. We have a meeting set of the economic development leadership, the folks from the Port Authority, and I think Paul's been involved, Debbie's been invited and been involved, set for July 21st at 9:30 a.m. at the chamber. So if any of you are interested in continuing and being a part of the final document, obviously the city council would be definitely has to have that idea and that really having buy-in into that. So the document that you have, we talked about in the May meeting when I presented on what the Chamber of Commerce had done the previous year and what we were looking toward in relation to the reorganization. We want to create a separate 501c3 which would act, focus strictly on economic development. Chamber of Commerce has a mission, has a separate mission of representing its members, and while I've maintained that economic development focus, I still had been put into a position of being the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. And so the chamber will be able to focus on members. The new organization will be specifically focused on economic development. If you look at the first page of your document, under the objectives piece, it's really probably the most telling, and that the whole purpose is to increase the number of leads, whether that's internally or externally, whether that's people, companies that are already here, that are expanding, quality jobs, and wealth creation within our community. In order to do all of that, there are a number of pieces of wheel spokes, I guess you could call them. Economic development marketing. We'd like to participate and be part of leading policy discussions related to economic development, providing forums. Also, we have an entrepreneurial development group which deals with business finance and coaching with a number of organizations from throughout the community. Retention expansion site visit teams, a real estate development team, and infrastructure improvements for development. Right now, we've talked extensively about broadband and have a broadband council that's just been established. So we're working forward in just that overall strategic view. And you asked me to talk a little bit about the governance piece. We were looking at a 9-member board of directors. As I was reviewing this again tonight, I noticed that one of the groups that was supposed to be on the list was left off, and it is you. It's the city. Obviously, that is a critical portion. So we're not sure what happened there. But the intent was to have a 9-member board. When the group meets in July 21st, we'll look at how we would make a 10-member board work. But primarily, in order to be part of the board, an organization would have to make a minimum contribution of $15,000 per year. An executive committee would be formed consisting of donors of over $50,000 per year. And obviously, we've looked at the county. The university has indicated a desire to participate at that level, and the city participates at that level currently. In order to be able to carry out the business of the organization, it's critical for all of these organizations and the folks that represent these organizations to be at the table and really guiding economic development in the direction that together through consent that folks want to see economic development moving. So I've listed a group of partners. Those partners, I think, will be primarily involved in our committee work. The spokes on the wheel, I consider that to be our committee work, and those folks would be engaged and involved in that. And they can also be engaged at different levels if they so wish. I've attached a draft copy of the bylaws for this group. And again, it too is a work in progress. We already talked about the purpose, and serving the entire county is, that's the area that we're going to be responsible for. We talked about the levels on the board of directors. A full institutional membership would be at the $50,000 level. And other institutional memberships, you're eligible with a minimum investment of $15,000 to be part of the board. On the board. We also offer affiliate memberships at $1,000. Some folks want to participate and just be able to donate to economic development in our community, and then individual memberships for those who may also wish to participate. The institutional membership obviously has the greatest amount of say in what's happening. The membership is eligible to vote, to hold a position on the board, and to serve as a member of the executive committee. The other institutional members are eligible to vote and hold an open position on the board of trustees granted through an election process, because we will most likely have an open seat. That would be the opportunity for some of the institutional members to hold elections in order to decide who would fill that open institutional member seat. I don't know, Debbie, how far into this you want me to go, but the idea is to have at least 9 meetings a year, just as we had with the chamber. We'll have a larger, I see as having a larger advisory type of organization that will meet on a quarterly basis, kind of get the input from our partner organizations to make sure we're all communicating on what's happening.
And that's probably enough for giving an overview. And then I'm going to, before we open things up, pass out to folks the current scope of work that is attached to the chamber contract, because currently the city is contracting with the Chamber of Commerce to do economic development activity. When we renegotiated that contract last time around was the first time that we attached specific deliverables. So this is currently what we're paying the chamber to do. So it was when we first were negotiating that and talking it through, we did clearly try to separate out the chamber's membership services kind of activity, because that's really their it's a different function than the economic development function that we have been investing public funds in. And I think that this proposed structure separates that obviously even more clearly, so that folks can see the public purpose of the investment that we're making really clearly. So currently, the things that are included in the chamber's scope of work is enterprise zone management, community reinvestment areas, and tax increment financing, working with the city on implementing the comprehensive plan, providing some assistance around policy development, and some examples would be the site plan review and the work that we've done on higher standards for floodplain regulations, working with community groups to promote community quality of life efforts and community events. So working with the Clean Committee, I think some of the 4th of July activities, and that was really, there were a lot of partnerships that existed that we tried to actually put in writing and include there with some of the work that had been occurring even before it was really spelled out. The entrepreneurial development, small business outreach, redevelopment and community development, kind of marketing some of the empty buildings and trying to promote redevelopment, and then reporting to the city so that we had a clear vision of like how these funds were being used. So this is what's currently in place, and that's how our public funds are currently being used. We are going to be, this contract runs through the end of this current year, so it is the right time for us to be having this conversation. It gives people some time to think about what we want to use our funds for in relation to economic development, and this discussion about the structure of how that's going to happen in the Athens area. I think it fits together really nicely. So just wanted to, I don't want us to have to come up with the list of everything that we would want in a contract like this that we are negotiating, but since a lot of folks didn't go through this the last time around, I thought we should kind of get this out there and open it up to some discussion. So with that, questions and thoughts on all of this? Mayor.
In terms of your economic development, when do you plan to have this set up? I guess the next question. They're talking about a new contract by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. What's your timetable?
January 1st.
Okay. So
2009 is when the transition will officially take place.
Jim.
I guess I need to spend some time looking at the drafts of their policies that Jennifer just gave us. My question is, this scope of work that we have here describes our contract with you to provide services for us. Is that offered here? I don't see that quickly looking through here.
All of the pieces are not specifically spelled out here, but I think that the committee structure and the activities that we're doing within the committees address a lot of this. For example, the enterprise zone management, all of that will be a function that this group maintains. The comprehensive plan implementation, absolutely. I think that deals with the policy piece as well. And I think the community groups, some of that we can continue, but I think that when we really look at the functions of economic development, some of those pieces will remain part of what the Chamber of Commerce provides. The entrepreneurial development group, we do that. Redevelopment, community development, we're engaged in all three of those activities. And then obviously we would develop through a new scope of work reporting mechanisms that you would want, but I would assume we'd have a consistent reporting mechanism for all of the board members that are part of the council. Did that answer your question, Jim?
Well, I think I still have the question, and I understand that we need to look at this in a new way, and I guess I just need a little time to look at it from another direction than we were before, so that's all.
Chris.
And I probably do too, also being new to this. And if I'm understanding right, this December 2005 document is the existing scope of work. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I understand what you're saying, that some of that community group component may naturally go to the membership. But I guess, so looking at that existing scope, And then the new county economic development, I guess, my question would be, how will the services or the partnership between any of these potential executive committee members, of which the city, will likely be one, how will the services be enhanced, do you think? And what, I don't know if that's putting you too much on the spot tonight, but, and how might potentially this scope of work look different? Will there be some new features?
Yeah, I think from the scope that there are pieces that are missing that we're already working on.
Okay.
That I think obviously the broadband council piece, we've been engaged in workforce development activities very heavily. I mean, that's an additional, we're pulling all the workforce development groups together and identifying, okay, what do we need to do? Employers are telling us that's the most important thing. But then they also say child care is the most important thing. Which is a workforce issue. So I think you're going to see some enhanced services in that respect. And again, it's even more focused. I want to increase the number of retention and expansion visits that we do currently. And I want to engage the public sector in those visits so that there's unity and that we can communicate back and forth on the policy front with businesses.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Do you have any anticipation yet of who the executive committee might be comprised of? That's at the second level.
I would anticipate the city and the county and Ohio University probably be maybe the only three.
The meeting that is coming up, folks who want to be part of that conversation can participate in that. Okay. The first time, the earlier version of this that I saw, it seems to me that the Chamber's leadership has really put a lot of thought into the transition process and the proposed structure to figure out something that's going to really look at the range of partners that we have in the community that are doing, I think, some really innovative and powerful economic development work, but also maintain some accountability for the public funds that are used for this work. So, I know that you've been moving down this road for some time in a pretty thoughtful way, and I appreciate the work that you're doing there. I don't think we have to come to any particular conclusion tonight. I just wanted to get to this next level of the information so we can keep processing this before we have to make a decision by the end of the year.
Debbie, I don't know if you want comments to come through you, to be emailed to me, or if you guys just want to email directly to me any questions or concerns, and that could probably help us during the dialogue on the 21st.
I don't want to bottleneck that at all.
Okay,
So
bring them to me.
Talk to Jennifer. Okay. Any closing remark you want to make?
Your comment about the board working on this, the chamber board and our membership, and during a membership breakfast which you attended, we had a number of questions which I thought were very thoughtful, very good questions, and so we have the support. We've done surveys with our members, and we have the support to do the reorganization, and they see the strength in for both organizations.
Paul?
Jennifer, if it's possible, can you get me the electronic version of your latest draft?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
It's going to go out to all the economic development leadership group.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And I think Nancy has one miscellaneous item for planning and development.
Not a member of the committee, but I was hoping that maybe you would all agree with me that it's probably time for us to require carbon monoxide detectors in the housing code, and maybe see if it's a doable thing by the 1st of January 2009, starting with that inspection, Paul. And if that doesn't, maybe the 30th of June 2009, and all members of council introducing that change.
Okay.
They cost about $50, and they're in, I think the chief, and I actually should have let Sherry do this. The chief is strongly in favor of it. I've installed them in my house. The only problem I the house next door to me that I rent out. But the only thing I see as a liability, potentially, and maybe not a liability, but a problem, is that they require an outlet, and some houses are fairly short on outlets. But they plug in, and they're effective, and you can see right away as a readout what the carbon monoxide reading is. So, and 50 is doable, I think, given the money that's made in these places. But you could give us some feedback if you don't want to go forward. I mean, if you think I should wait on it. I think we talked about it before. It just kind of fell between the cracks.
I have no problem if you want to put that in. I know the fire chief has been wanting this for a long time. You know, again, it ended up in, Title 29, I assume, housing code, so you need to amend that.
Right. So
You
anybody?
might want to contact the homeowners association, see what they think, but
Maybe. I think it's a safety matter.
Or not.
Or not. I mean, I'm not one of them, but I'm one of them. And I think that it's something that you should do. And, and I'm protect the underprotected is the way I feel about
would you, question, would you restrict that to, some houses are all electric and therefore they have no gas source attached to them?
Well, we could let the code officers at that point make a decision on that, couldn't we? But the garage is as big a force as anything else, so if there's an attached garage, then that would, so in places where there is an attached garage or a fossil fuel fired furnace, could we do it that way, Pat, do you think?
I'm sorry, what was that? He's taking notes.
I don't think all directors like being zing like that. I just wondered, could we make them limited to those who are asked for momentary extemporaneous opinions? Could we limit it to those that have attached garages, or the requirement for a carbon monoxide detector to houses with attached garages or internal fossil fuel powered furnaces?
I'm not sure what would be the problem with it offhand. I can certainly look into that in some more detail if that's the direction you'd like to take.
Yeah, I'll probably try to put something together, yeah.
My question would be, there have been problems with smoke detectors that we've ended up having to require ones that have either long-term batteries or are hardwired to avoid people just taking them down and sticking them out on the porch or something if it's going off and annoying them.
I remember that very well.
And so I don't know if there are issues like that with
Unplugging
CO
them,
detectors.
the CO detectors are generally plugged in.
So if they were going off, would people just
No, it's a
remove
readout.
them?
It's a readout. It's a LCD readout.
The ones I've had have made a sound when they are going off. Of course.
Oh, I've never
There's
heard it go off, but I mean, I've just seen 0000 across.
No, they've gone off, and they do malfunction like anything. I know the one I had down at the River Place did that, but the safety is just eons better than where we are now. So everything malfunctions.
Yes.
Yeah.
We, the staff of the city staff went through fire training last month, and that was one of the things that was addressed as carbon monoxide detectors. And I did ask the fire chief how the failure rate. He says they've improved quite a bit over time. And you can get ones with readout, and they won't go off until they get to a certain parts per million or parts per billion, I forget which it is. But he is concerned about that. He's reiterated he'd like to see that. If somebody calls up, they'll check it, that they feel that's their duty, and they're, he's aware of the danger.
The purpose, the reason why I was saying starting with inspections the 1st of January 2009 or to the 30th of June is I hope, if everybody, all 5,000 units went running out and bought one right now, it would cause a major problem, just as was caused by the smoke detector. So maybe it would be good to phase it in a little bit. And that's what I see as
Make Lowe's happy.
Well, yeah, C&E and Lowe's will be very happy. Okay.
We could ask the code office to see if they probably have a somewhat of an indication, and Chief Troxel, about what percentage right now are using carbon monoxide detectors. I'm sure there's a number of them in homes already and rentals already. So it's not like they all have to run out at once.
Right, but it's just the impending take effect date.
June may be easier to do because
What'd you say?
June next year.
No, June. Yeah, I was thinking, and that would be inspections starting in June 2009. They'd be on. Okay. in those places with wood burners, fossil fuels. I don't think there are any places that are rentals that are wood burners, but who knows, within the city limits. You're sure there are? Okay.
There's probably one out there. Though.
Fireplace?
They try to keep it.
Yeah, okay,
I used to live in one.
okay. Those would be especially those. Okay, Utilities Committee, not too much to do tonight, I circulated an ordinance to try to bring together what we were trying to do last week, and it is a work in progress, and I don't know if it's going anywhere, and Matt has sent you a pile of material, so now you have a reading from the Economic Development people and a set of readings from Mr. Hayes and Matt. But what I see here is a little bit of a fine-tuning, excuse me, I'm in a little bit of pain, a fine-tuning of our existing policy, and basically saying that I think I asked the law, no, not the law director, I passed it around, I asked the mayor, I asked the service director, and tried to get everything in order. I did whereases, but I'm looking at it and thinking, whereases are toothless. So they probably have to be stated as principles once we do it. So what we said, city water is not available to said property. The area is serviced by LEAC's Water District. Annexation of the property is required prior to said sewer extension. That was what I heard loud and clear. That we need an executed agreement with LEAC's Water District for collection of the monthly user fee. And a person from LEAC's is here and probably could tell us that this will not be a difficult thing to do, right? You want to say a word about it now so you can go home after waiting all last week? Okay. Whereas the owner agrees, the developer will submit the plan for review under Title 41. I mean, why would we have Title 41 and not make people do it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Whereas the owner agrees to pay all costs associated with the extension and maintenance of a sewer line to the property. Their engineer had it going from commercial across, about just where TS Trim goes, except to the right. You know that place? I guess you maybe haven't driven back there, but there is some open space there, and then across the school property, and then across the river. And we say the owner is, or the developer is going to pay the cost of acquiring necessary easements to access the property, and of course they would be dedicated back to the city. The line installation performed by the owner meets city specification. The owner understands that the tap is limited to the proposed holes or facility with no guarantee of service to the entire project area. Whereas property must be contiguous to the city corporate line, and tap approval expires if not installed within 2 years from the date of adoption. These would be basically principles upon which we would move forward. Now. There are some little blips in here that are problematical. There's one thing that I need to ask the mayor to ask his people. Water and sewer in our community are intertwined. If we're not collecting water and using the benefits from the water collection, the sewer fees will have to be 100+%. Even though it's inside the city, given the situation, because water and sewer work together. And so that will, and I'd like some number to give. You could probably ask Mr. Carr to tell us what would be an appropriate number for the fees within the city, please.
You're talking about for the sewer tap?
Only for the sewer fees, yes. The taps are understood, they will pay.
Okay.
It's understood they will pay everything else that's associated with this. Yes. Okay, so that's basically my effort at this. You guys can have at it. Tell me I just don't want to spend another 2 hours talking about this, and this is fundamentally what I think is going on, with the exception of the amount of money. Because the administration wants it annexed first, and now I know Mr. Hayes would like to start working, as he said to us, on the 3rd, in November of this year, doing construction. I'm afraid that the annexation will be first. I mean, he could start it right now. Even we could be reading this if we get the go-ahead. Tell me what you think. Anybody? Boy, we're voluble
We'll go back to Section 2.
Okay.
Where the service safety director is authorized to install a tap on property outside the city.
And it should say when annexation is complete.
Okay,
This is our boilerplate thing, and
Okay.
it's not, it needs to be readjusted
I want to insert the words
when annexation
when
is complete.
annexation process is complete, which can take 6 months
Oh, more than that.
if we're lucky.
Remember WODA?
Well, it is contiguous with the city, the current city limits, and there don't have to be any other properties involved. So it seems like it should be fairly straightforward as far as annexations go. And we did get a letter from Mr. Hayes basically saying that this is all okay. The principals, the point-by-point principals response, that it's okay, he's willing to annex and to comply with Title 41. Is that correct, Mr. Geiser?
Yes. Identify yourself and give your address, ma'am,
He's
please.
been here before.
Yeah, I know, we know him.
Matt Geiser and Portland, Ohio, not to be confused with Racine, like I said last week. I apologize.
He's moving around. I don't know if we can trust him.
I just moved and walked up to the mic to say something else I had in my head what I was going to say, and Mr. Bias asked me my name and address, and I said, where do I live? And Racine came out of my mouth, but that was inaccurate, Portland. Okay, as far as, I've got a packet here. Can I hand this out? Just that has the 7 criteria that we had originally talked about.
We can add that to our reading.
I think most of you probably have that. That also has the maps in the back, just because I came prepared to, if anybody had any questions about that. And first of all, I'd like to apologize. Mr. Hayes is stuck in New York. He was supposed to be back this afternoon about 2 o'clock, and he's been held up by weather with flights. So he was very apologetic and wanted me to make sure that you knew that he wanted to be here tonight. Originally, we started with 7 criteria. So, Ms. Phillips, you're correct that the 7 criteria that were originally given to us as guidelines, there aren't any foreseen issues with those, and our responses on each one of those. I cannot speak for Mr. Hayes on these first 3 as far as there's some other language in there that is brand new tonight, and is probably brand new to the guidelines for utilities extension. Primarily the annexation of the property prior to the sewer extension, and what that would entail. I can't speak to what his response would be to that, and if that's actually saying that the annexation of the property would be required prior to the sewer extension approval, or the actual physical tapping into the sewer would be my question there. And again, this is just from my hip because
I don't know if I can answer that exactly, but if we would proceed with, if it works, we would proceed with the ordinance if it would be signed by the mayor. Then once you annexed, once you started the annexation process, but it would be you would have the guarantee of the mayor's signature and the clerk's signature, and if it passes.
Okay. And again, I can't just.
It's a law.
These are my ideas. I can't speak to what Mr. Hayes is going to want, how he would respond, because this is new when we came in tonight. The Title 41 issue. I think that's a brand new thing for sewer extension. I know that once you get to the planning commission stages, that comes into play, but we haven't dealt with that because we're just strictly talking about approval for sewer extension. So I can't represent that he's in agreement or disagreement with that.
Matt, there's one thing that I think you have to be absolutely clear on this, and I'm going to be absolutely blunt. Sometimes I hear that you guys do not really care that much about annexation. I don't mean you, but in general, the process. And, that alarms me a little bit. And so this is why this document is the way it is. I do not.
That from us?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember, but I have this impression that maybe sometime in the future it might happen. Well, that's not the case. It's going to happen in due course, and it's going to happen with Title 41. Because, we have to do that in order to have the quality product that we want in the city. Unless these other 6 guys can say she's full of prunes and not voted in, but there is a little bit of ambivalence, and let's pretend that there hasn't been. Let's just be right out there.
What I can say is that if we say that annexation, we're not worried about annexation as far as that's fine. If that's what it means, originally, there are precedents where places outside the city have been allowed sewer taps and not required to annex into the city. And so, there are several precedences for that. So, when we say we don't care about annexation, I don't know if I've used that term.
Right,
or if
maybe
Mr. used that term.
Yeah, I apologize.
More that if that's a requirement, then we're not opposed to that requirement. That's not going to kill this project. So it's not a lackadaisical, well, whatever, you want to annex it. It's more that we're not requesting to go forward with this. We're not requesting an approval on on the sewer without annexation.
Okay, that's
we're not
good to hear.
trying to do that. And so if that clarifies maybe if there's been a statement.
Well, it's been an evolving process, so it's good to get it out.
Sure.
And also, when you refer to Title 41 for sewer extension, Title 41 would look at the project as a whole. With the annexation, that would then become part of the city, and access would become something that also needs to be reviewed in terms of coming out on target.
And again, Title 41 is brand new. I know nothing about Title 41.
It's not as bad as I think it is.
It's our site plan
You
review.
might even like
I
it.
can't speak to that for Mr. Hayes because this is
It's
new.
our site plan review process for, larger projects to bring them into a public review process. One of the other projects that came forward and wanted the extension of city services prior to annexation, which they did then go ahead and annex, we worked that out with a development agreement, but there were some questions about items in the development agreement and whether we had the jurisdiction to be going back and forth talking about those things while it was still outside the city limits. So I think that rather than get into some convoluted area where there are questions about jurisdiction, where we've spelled things out just in a development agreement or in an ordinance, it is a lot cleaner process to annex and approve it, going through the normal procedures.
And I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure I'm not representing what Mr. Hayes' response is going to be to those three.
We'll redo it and get it back to him, I promise.
Thank you. The other ones, I think, are all addressed in the original 7 guidelines that we were presented with and have there. The owner agrees to pay all costs associated with the extension, the maintenance of sewer line. I just, on a personal, I have a question. My understanding is that maintenance is for a period of time, like 1 year or something like that, and then the city takes over the maintenance, and that's just a general.
It becomes ours, yes?
Yeah, it becomes yours.
Because you have to build it to our standards.
Sure. Well, and there's inspections along the way, I would assume.
We hope so. We
That just
certainly
says
hope
with
so.
extension and maintenance of the sewer line, but I assume that maintenance is for a set period of time. The said line installation performed by the owner meets city specifications. That's pretty much a given, I think, and understood on both sides. The owner understands that the tap is limited to the proposed. I would prefer that says assisted living facility, just because there is no agreement with Holzer in place. There's preliminary talks at this time, and it's really an assisted living project. I don't want anyone to get the idea that Holzer, while they are the ones we're talking to right now, that they're a management factor in this, and that could potentially change.
Good. I can do that.
The continuous and contiguous with the property, the city corporate line, I think, is no problem, and the tap approval expiration, that's new, but that's probably an understood as well. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So I really just need to get Mr. Hayes' response to the Title 41 issue and the how the annexation takes place. I just assumed that would be more once we got to the Planning Commission. We get the sewer extension approval, then we go to that stage. So I'm not really prepared with anything to
My opinion,
represent.
should this pass, you would be working with the administration. We would say, if you follow these rules, we're good with it. And so you would work it out with them. I mean, not with respect to Title 41, but with respect to timing and that sort of thing.
Right.
Anybody else have any comments? Anyone dead set against it? You want to talk about it some more? You want to read all this stuff some more? What my proposal would be this: if we can get it together, read it next time. First time, if we can get it together, if Mr. Hayes is interested in continuing. Then, are we meeting on the 28th? No, I don't think so. Then when you have NIMS training, we could have a special session. You lucky guys, come in and we could have I'll come in and if Bill wasn't here, and we could have a reading then, and we'd have the last reading the 2nd of September, which is the day after Labor Day, Tuesday.
When is the NIMS training?
Are we having a meeting in August?
No, that's one of the good things, Pat. You're going to be off every Monday night from,
Except for August 11th.
except for August 11th.
That's what I was asking. Are we actually going to have a meeting in August?
We have a public hearing scheduled for that evening already.
Is that the NIMS
But are we going
training?
to do a special session along with that, or is this just going to be?
You don't have to come.
Well, I'll be out of town either way, so.
So what are you talking about?
Okay. Anybody over there? Anything?
Yeah, and I guess it's attempted to be covered here, but I think we're putting the cart before the horse, and maybe this is just the way things happen in government a lot, but granting sewer extension without knowing what the project specifically is going to be seems backwards to me. And I will not, probably I wouldn't support it unless I had pretty good assurances that this project will be in compliance with site plan review, or if it turns out to be larger with the PUD.
And I understand
city
that.
code.
The issue is it's pretty tough to determine the project if we don't know if we have sewer.
And you'll have ample time to have a discussion with Mr.
That's
Hayes.
the real issue, not a... There's a hole in the bucket, I guess. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, we
so
understand.
I guess we can tie the two together to
Yeah.
assure one if the other is.
Well, and there's and some of that is, there's a great deal of cost that goes into designing these. I mean, the architect firm that we're working with is out of Columbus. This is all they do is assisted living facilities. They're very familiar with all the state codes and federal regulations and that kind of thing. And I said, this is all they do. Their portfolio is 3 binders, probably 2 inches thick apiece. And to have them draw a set of plans and to expense that, not knowing whether or not we're even going to be able to proceed with sewer is kind of, on our end, that's getting the cart before the horse. You know, to go spend $30,000 or $40,000 on a set of prints.
Right, and I understand that, and I fully appreciate that, and I think there's a way we can work through that and make sure that we both get what we want out of it.
Okay, they're all baffled. We're very quiet tonight for some reason. All right, so we'll try to work on it, pass it through Pat again, and bring something like this up to Mr. Hayes by the weekend if he wants to proceed. As it is, he can get back to us.
Can I ask one question at this time or about...
I want to talk to Leax guy too. No,
That's what I wanted to...
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Is it doable?
I've been here twice.
Yeah, I know. It made me sad.
And Mr. Lane, did you get a chance to review, or did you receive the intergovernmental agreement that they've used with the county? I sent to you at all?
With the packet.
I haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, we've had some arrangements with Leax, but now this is going to be a new way, right? A new one?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Tell us how you think it could work, although
Well-
you would negotiate with the service director and the mayor.
Yeah, the agreement that we've got on the table right now, and actually it's not been signed or adopted by the county commissioners, is a simple that, we can set the sewer rates up on our billing software to where when the bill for a Leax water customer goes out, it's got the sewer bill on, just, following the same rate tables that you would give us. What we were proposing is it's collected in. We can collect any late fees, any penalties, whatever, billing parameters that the city sets for the service. And then at the end of the month, we would forward the monies to you and all of the billing journals and everything for backup to satisfy auditing purposes. Again, we haven't started that process yet ourselves, but we've modeled it after other rural water districts that have it in place today. The Village of Albany has also expressed interest in it in the past, so it's something that's been floating around out there for a while.
And Mr. Geiser, I said I hadn't reviewed the specifics of the agreement, but what's being described is a very simple, straightforward intergovernmental agreement, so I'm sure that is not going to be the sticking point, at least on the legal end.
Adam Baker is Leax's attorney, and he's reviewed it and actually been the one that's helped draft it.
Are we talking about it in terms of you billing your customers for the sewer or sewer services? Is there an administration fee and that gets loaded onto your customers? Or is there no administration fee?
There was an 80 cents per bill right now in the agreement that's on the table with the commissioners.
Okay. Just wondering.
And there'd be a single meter, I think, in this case, right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that would be what we would be proposing, yeah.
Okay, so the 80-cent charge is... All right.
Well, no, I mean, okay, in the future, though, we're talking about
I wasn't-
10 acres of
Yeah.
80 of 300.
Yeah.
Okay, so this,
There are no
you see where
guarantees
this
on
could
Yeah,
can
we see
categorize
where-
to more than one bill.
We see that.
Okay.
It's just for this particular case. I appreciate you coming twice.
No problem.
And I appreciate the new positive interaction here.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, Matt. Talk to you soon, I bet. Okay.
I just have a quick question. Why is the city unable to provide water? We just don't have a large enough pipe in that part of town?
It's LEAX's jurisdiction.
I'll sit back down on that one. It's LEAX is a 6119 public subdivision, and that is on that side of Margaret's Creek is within our boundaries. So we've got water rights to it.
We could have a fight, you know.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
No, we like the new happy.
Yeah, we're not going down that path.
Thank you again.
Could I just add one thing real quick? In that packet that I provided, there was also an email from Mike McAvoy, the engineer who originally presented this. There were some questions from a couple different council members just in conversations about the way the line would go in. I know that there's that land lab over there and that kind of thing. And so he provided, in that packet, just gave you information about directional boring and how they can, because it's under pressure, they can go around things, under things, and that kind of stuff. So that's why that's in there. If anybody has any concerns about that, you can read that.
And you have a copy, Mayor, of that material?
Yes,
From
I
Matt?
do. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Because you could pass it on to Scott, Nick, or whoever was doing it.
Pass
Thanks.
around to the staff.
Okay. Thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Leax. All right, Columbus Road, I asked, and I guess I'm going to ask again. I think they're gathering up that ductile pipe, and I'd like to know what happened to the pump, if we own it or where it is parked, and if we really want to keep it. But my main question is, Paul already said they're picking it up, the pipe. But the other thing I wanted to know about is, and this is just my basic niggling in my brain, if it is the case that that sewer lift station has fallen down a bit, I guess I wonder if it's down as much as they have a little reverse flying buttress kind of wedge of concrete in there that's there. But I guess I wonder, since there's quite a bit of heft going up that hill, and I don't know that it's true, but I guess I want somebody who has operated, maybe not models, but has some engineering background to say, will that displacement affect the pump? Will there be a pump problem in 2 years? And I guess that maybe at some time in the future, I'd like to know the answer to that, Paula. And I don't expect to have it tonight, but sometime, and if we need to, we could put some concrete blocks down there to lift it up. In keeping with the rest. I'm teasing. I'm joking. Just joking. I'm sorry. I've finally woken up. All right. Okay, so that's the Columbus Road thing, and I'm worried about it. It's just like one of those things at 3 in the morning I sometimes worry about. Since my kids are gone, I have other things to worry about. Catch Basin, Sunnyside and Lloyd. I was wondering if, when a citizen had several times asked about this, John McVickers, catch basins, relatively modest cost. Can we get the crew going and get that in?
We've got it.
Got it? Good. Got it covered? Hope not with leaves. Okay,
We already
thank you.
have catch basins, and it'll cost us some concrete man-hours.
Yeah, I know. It's just minor, so, why not?
You want it
And let's have a
certain
little
color or something? or
No, let's have a little
crocheted?
corrective action and say, when a citizen suggests something, don't just say, no, I can't afford it because we don't have enough money. Say, oh, what a good idea. We'll look into that, and then do it.
Or say we don't have enough money.
And then they say we don't have enough money.
Yeah, we may not.
Yeah.
That could be true.
It could be true,
in
but
this
it's not
instance-
likely.
In this instance, I just want to say thank you for
Yeah, thank you for doing it.
doing that.
University Courtyard Pump, we talked about it last time. I don't know that we really want to go over it again. If it's ready to come out next week, we could do this, NIMS training in the second.
I don't think it's ready to go, is it?
It's not ready to go?
Not quite. That's a 2005 quote.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, well, at least
that
it's
hurts.
1976.
Right.
Okay.
We'll get it up to.
Yeah, and you could remind them that they didn't pay building permit fees, so maybe they could pay it out of the money they saved on that. Okay, old issues. I'm not going to talk about air conditioning because I'm actually cold tonight.
You and Paul are here.
But, what I said was we had 50 people in here. We had this wonderful meeting, and it was just ungodly hot in here. I don't know how the man who was giving the presentation was able to continue. It was just steamy. So since this is a handicap accessible meeting room, if you can't, it's cold tonight. But,
They made some rearrangements. They've been actually working on this past week.
oh, good. Well, see, all I need to do is complain a little bit. And then
No,
we can
I'm not sure what they did, but they did change a few of the ducting.
And it's very important because this is handicap accessible for 50 people, and it's the only one we have, other than the community center. All right, I'm done. Recreation Committee.
Thank you. Although I may have to stall briefly, since we're experiencing some technical difficulties. We're very fortunate tonight to have two speakers here, Sarah Hartman and Brent Hartman, who are going to present and discuss any questions or concerns we may have regarding the Children's Museum, and also, I think, general educational input regarding the Children's Museum that is being discussed about for East State Street. Comment?
I need to declare that I'm on the board of the Children's Museum, so I'm not going to participate in the discussion or any decisions that council might make about it because I have a conflict.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to tell you all that we brought the short presentation. It'll probably only be maybe 25, 30 minutes. We'll be out of here.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
So we were switching
We cut it in
computers.
half. So I figured right at the end that you guys would probably appreciate that.
I think I'm going to have to stand over here.
Sarah.
Yeah. And if Sarah's a mic here too.
You want a chair?
I think we're okay.
We can move over there so you can do what you need.
As long as this works, we're okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm Sarah Hartman.
I'm Brent Hartman.
We're both originally from this area. We grew up in this region, went to OU here, lived away for a number of years, and then moved back. We have a 3-year-old. We're getting ready to have another one in just a few weeks.
Another 3-year-old? Wow.
Brent, you look great. Brent, you look great. Yeah.
Thank you. I shouldn't. But no way.
I teach part-time at the university and the College of Education.
And I own the O'Neill Hartman Insurance Agency in the Plains.
So we've been working on a project, the Ohio Valley Museum of Discovery. We started about 2 years ago. We'd like to bring a children's discovery museum to our area. We think it would fill a real void in this area for educational opportunities. We currently have 7 people on our board. Debbie is one of them. We also have Steve Fetch. He's also on our board. And we've made a lot of progress in the last 2 years. Speak to any of that?
Absolutely. We've obtained our 501c3 status. We've also, which I always do this whenever I give this presentation, I always get ahead of myself, but we've also been working with the Voinovich School on business planning, as well as working with Gerard Hilferty and Associates, which is a local national museum design firm, on the visioning process and getting an idea of what the museum should look like when we're done with it.
Or not.
Here,
It's okay. No, I got it.
Turn the computer around.
That's okay. Anybody mind if I stand here? Okay. So our catchphrase is explore the world we live in, because we feel that that's really how children learn best, is to be able to interact with the world in a hands-on manner, and that's what we'd like the museum to offer kids, if possible. And several reasons for OV.
We're going to move the mic towards you over there.
Oh, I know.
As long as we don't twist it off.
I'm usually plenty loud. So, why Ohio Valley Museum of Discovery? Obviously, opportunities for kids. We really feel like this region In the summer is great. In the winter, there's not so much to do with kids. And even in the summer, there aren't always all of the educational opportunities that we would like to have. Again, we feel that kids learn best through doing and in a hands-on manner, which is what the Children's Museum offers for kids. It's not the kind of museum that you would picture that you just walk in and look at exhibits as you're walking through, but you actually interact and get into the exhibit and get to experience things. So that's what we would like to offer for kids. We'd also see it as an educational resource for the region, for teachers and for parents. There are a lot of educational standards, being in education myself, that it's difficult to accomplish when you are a classroom teacher, and we see ourselves as being a potential resource in the classroom. Connecting to the world. This is a pretty small, isolated region, so if we can help kids reach out and see the greater picture, that would be one of our goals, as well as helping them instill pride and understanding of this unique region that we live in and that we're also proud of. So we see that all being part of our components.
So, all that being said, the next question is, how do we get to having this museum in our area? And we believe that through interactive exhibits that involve creative play and allow visitors to engage in cooperative exploration between science, art, literature, and culture. Had to read that, I haven't quite memorized that one yet. We believe that there are linkages between all of these different areas, and our exhibits, we hope, will show how they're connected. This is where I jumped ahead to, our existing partnerships. There certainly are other groups that we have met with and talked to. Okay, I think you can skip over that.
So, in working with Hilferty and Associates, they have helped us with our vision and going forward, but they've also helped us develop some ideas for some exhibits and have agreed to help us in the future, and this is one of them. It's called the Hocking Highway. It's a water exhibit. Any of you who've ever been around kids know how much kids like to play in water. And in our region, it has a lot of significance in talking about transportation to the region, in talking about the different watersheds. Also, teachers could look at different climactic and precipitation patterns. So many different things we could do, in addition to just plain old play, which is also so great for kids and is right now one of the first things to be cut, oftentimes in classrooms, because teachers are so worried about specific objectives. So this is just a pretty neat little mock-up. We were pretty excited when we got this.
We'll be more excited when we have the money to build it.
That too.
What's next? Obviously, we're here hoping that we can secure the space in the old groundskeeper's house on East State Street, which I'm sure you all know. And then hopefully we can secure that, and then it's a matter of adapting the space to what we need it to be. This would include potentially ADA compliance, if necessary, which it probably will be. And also, another thing I would want to say about the house in particular is that this is not a long-term location for us. We really hope that we'll get in here and show people what a wonderful idea it is that we have, and then we'll be able to raise more money and then move into a permanent facility. We certainly think that will happen in time. We're currently trying to hire an executive director, someone who can give their time to the project. We came to the realization that our entire board have other jobs. So, once we secure and adapt the space, get an executive director, we're going to start designing exhibits and getting them installed in the space towards getting the museum open. We're going to continue to try and strengthen our partnerships with Hilferty, with Voinovich School, with other area museums, so that we're not duplicating efforts. I think it's going to be crucial to our success in a smaller community. And, of course, fundraising. I think once we have a space, we can show people what we're doing. I think it's going to get people more excited about the potential and get people to give us more money, we hope.
So we really feel that Athens is a fantastic place to live, and that by adding a children's museum, it just makes it even better. And just adds one more thing as an asset for families trying to raise children. Now, we have one last thing we want to show you. Steve Fetch helped us put together a video. In the words of kids, sorry, I just reconfigured my screen really differently when I came up here. Okay, so tell us why you think it would be really special to have a children's museum in Athens.
Because I think it would be nice to have one closer to where we live so we don't have to drive far away to go to one. You don't have to go all the way to Columbus or something like that just to learn something. We usually go like for 1 or 2 days, so we're not just driving up there and driving back. This is going to be a short car ride. There's a trail to
They're 3.5 and almost 9 months old. There's a lot to do in Athens in the summertime. We have a lot of good parks and playgrounds, but when it's raining out or snowing, there's not a whole lot of options other than Burger King's indoor playground, or the library. So it would be nice to have something to do that's educational and maybe a close field trip location too for school students.
Can you tell me the things you have to do to get there and stuff?
We have to pack a lunch, and we have to make sure everyone's on the bus. It takes forever for the bus to move. And when it finally does, it's taken an hour, and then we have to wait 2 more hours to get to Columbus. So, yeah, that's a long, long time to get there. I can run faster than you.
Really? That's fast. Wow, look at him.
The weather is lousy.
Well, that's a good question. Not much, unfortunately. We have a lot of nice outdoor play areas here, but when the weather's rainy, sometimes you're just stuck in the house trying to have play groups with other parents and things. But it would be nice to have a place where all the parents could go, especially things that are good for kids to expand their minds and let them play. And it would just be a wonderful addition here to the Athens community.
Emma, do you think it would be fun to have a children's museum in Athens?
Yes, because children can learn things by themselves and not have to research upon them on the computer all the time. And books.
Do you think it would be fun to have a children's museum here?
Yes.
Have you ever been to a children's museum before?
Yeah.
Where did you go to a children's museum?
In Nebraska.
What did you think about it?
It was good.
What was good about it?
The bubbles.
Oh, was there?
I remember there was a giant heart. Not like a love heart, but...
What did you think of Cosi? Was it fun?
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
I like pulling the car and being still lifted in the air.
That sounds like fun. Would you like to have a children's museum here in Athens?
Yeah, so we don't have to go so far.
What's your favorite book?
The caterpillar.
Oh, the caterpillar book about the one who eats and eats. What are some of the things you like to learn about?
Circuits. Science.
What else? What in science do you like to learn about?
Dinosaurs. I like to play with, you always have to do with dinosaurs. That are like little baby birds. Doing the dinosaurs.
Do you like learning about dinosaurs?
Giraffes.
What else do you like?
Shapes.
Shapes. What's your favorite shapes?
Circles.
Circles. What do you think would be fun to have in a children's museum here?
That's a good question. A roller coaster.
Oh, that would be fun. What would you like to learn about in children's museum?
About like animals' habitats, because I really like animals. Different cultures of the world. Like extinct animals, like mammoths.
You did a great job. Thank you, Luke.
It's hard to get them all in unison. So that sums up our presentation about what we would like for the Children's Museum, and we're open for any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for sharing the information that was presented there, both the video and the PowerPoint. I think what impressed me also upon hearing you speak previously at the Rec Advisory Board meeting, which was well received, I thought, was the thought and the attention and detail and the energy that both you have, along with your support from your board members as well. And I think that it sounds like there's a lot of enthusiasm moving in this direction. And any of us who has ever accompanied young people or teenagers, children, whatnot, to museums such as COSI know that those experiences can be life-changing and very memorable. So I think that this can be an exciting opportunity. And I know that there's been dialogue and discussion with the mayor and the city service director as well regarding the use of the East 8th Street property. Are there other questions as well from council members? Comments? Mr. Sands?
Question, you're thinking about moving in and then installing some displays, some activity areas. I've never been in that building. It appears that it's just a normal house with rooms. Is that going to work for what you need, or how much modification are you going to have to make?
Well, we would have to build a ramp outside for handicap accessibility. We would also have to expand the bathroom, which in looking at the floor plan doesn't appear to be that difficult because there's a large pantry behind it that could easily be expanded into. We also talked about whether some of the walls could be removed, open it up a little bit. It is surprisingly open in one area of the downstairs, which is where we would plan to start, is in the downstairs.
Yeah, I mean, is it ideal? No. But it would be a place to get started and to get people excited about what we're doing. I think we have the room to do that. Yeah, I believe there is. And we had Chris Lee from Hilford & Associates come and look at the house, and he believed that we would be able to do what we want to do, at least initially.
I was present at PI, their presentation to the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Board. A little concerned about the space, but you say that that'll be utilized. I need council to be aware that there will be a fee associated with visiting, that you will be charging in order for children to attend the Children's Discovery Museum.
And if I may, I would like to say, too, that the fee, what we hope to do with the fee, so that it's not exclusive of any groups, would be to get businesses who might sponsor passes for children for a month or for a couple weeks, or however, depending on the interest we get, so that kids are never excluded because of their inability to pay.
They can go to the public library and get a day pass, or some other local establishment and get day passes to be able to go. And then the businesses would only have to pay for however many passes were used on their sponsorship days.
I'm going to follow up on the building question. It's not ideal, and you said that hopefully you move on to something, what might that ideal be? Could it grow and make that building there the ideal place?
There are certainly museums across the country that are in houses. So I wouldn't say that that wouldn't be a possibility. I think ideally we would see it as a, its own standing structure somewhere. But there definitely are models to look at of other museums that do only inhabit a house.
If we were going to enter into this, I like the idea of the Children's Museum being associated with the community center in that same space, so.
We like that idea a lot too. That was one of the things that seemed really neat about the whole thing, is that there could be programs that both organizations could work on, and another one of the partnerships to add to the list.
But certainly a fantastic location. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I don't know if everything happened with the museum the way we want it to happen. I don't think it would be an adequate space. Based on our visioning that we've done with Hilferty, which now granted, they're assuming a lot of things that may or may not be possible. However, based on what we've told them, it would take significantly more space and even some custom building to really make that happen. And again, I'm talking best case scenario is that this thing really takes off and we start attracting money, on the state, federal, level. So.
That said, we've also been told that the building that we are hoping to start off in might not be there forever. So we have to consider that as well. So that's also where we're kind of approaching this.
So we're lucky it's here now.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Mayor, Elahu?
I just want to say it sounds very exciting, and thanks for all the work you're putting into it and everyone that's been helping you with the process. One thing I noticed was initially it was, with the administration, I guess, a 3-year agreement to use the building?
With the possibility to renew for 2 additional 2-year.
And I guess you guys don't know yet, but do you anticipate being there for a certain number of years at this point, if you do get things
I
right?
mean, I would think it would be nice if we had the option of 7 years to potentially use the 7 years.
I mean, we would certainly hope that it takes on a life of its own and we're out in 3, but realistically speaking, who knows?
I set those years, essentially, looking at the files, Mayor Abel had an agreement, letter of endorsement to this organization, and I pretty much followed suit. I like the idea. I'm aware there's probably going to be some costs involved in bringing the house up to standards. I think that that was the concern of the fire chief, of course, who always looks at that. I think it's a good use of the building for the time being. How long, it depends on how fast they go off the ground and, how things roll up. The charging of admission really is, then again, that it's a sliding scale, obviously, or something that could be waived. And this is a city facility, which is why you have to weigh in on what it says. And I think there was a draft lease put together, I think cobbled together, crafted together, I should say. Very well, too. So, for you to look at and peruse. So it's up to you guys on what you feel.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, again, I'd like to thank both of you for being here this evening and sharing and presenting your idea and enthusiasm. It's well received, so.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank
We
you all.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. I don't know if there's any other, I don't have any miscellaneous at the moment. However, in a couple weeks or down the road, we may be discussing some other issues as well for recreation. But other than that, that's a wrap for me.
Okay, before we wrap, what were you planning to do? Planning an ordinance for next week? Are we going to talk about this more, or haven't gotten that far yet?
I guess I haven't. I haven't had dialogue with But when the mayor was addressing whether or not there was something in the works, I didn't...
Well, there's a draft lease that we Walker put together real quickly, and I don't know, obviously you didn't get copies of it, I guess, is that the case? No, okay.
We killed many trees.
More reading material. It really pretty much states that we are in favor of using this, or leasing it out, that they're, let's see, that they'll have to cover the insurance, that basically, let's see, they're required for the permits, gas, electric fees, hookups, et cetera, et cetera. They'll have to be insured. House is conveyed to them as is. I can give you a copy of this with everything that you want. If you want to...
I propose that we move forward unless there's any other concerns or hang-ups, but...
What's the timeline?
Timeline?
Depends on how soon we get in.
No, I mean, what's the timeline for the window of the lease? 3 or 7? It should have a callback principle, I guess.
It's here someplace.
Well, why don't we get it to us and maybe email it to us.
Okay, yeah, basically, again, it's period 3 years with renew 2 additional years. Option to renew 2 additional years.
And they're paying utilities, is that correct?
Yes.
That's good.
Actually, they'd be pretty much covering everything, but we would not be charging them for anything really, except they'd be in charge of fixing it up, getting it up to code, paying for all the utilities and all the upkeep.
So we're paying utilities right now, at least minimal, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cha-ching for the budget.
But I don't know about that. I think they're just keeping the thermostat low.
Every little bit counts.
Okay.
All adds up. Okay. Did you say it was a wrap?
Correct.
Oh, thank you. 9:03, I thought it was...